Welcome to ThinkTech on OC16, Hawaii's weekly newscast on things that matter to tech and to Hawaii. I'm Duke Oishi.
And I'm Donna Blanchard.
In our show this time, we'll look back at Hiroshima now 70 years later and see its effects not only on Japan, but on the world.
We'll examine what happened in 1945 and what nuclear weapons and nuclear energy have become since then, and the shadows they cast on our society and our lives.
August 6, 1945, the day the Enola Gay left Tinian Island with the Manhattan Project bomb that was to change history forever, was 70 years ago last week. The world went nuclear that day, and the world will never be the same.
In blinding explosions, the atomic bomb killed 140,000 people and left 2 cities in ruins. But it ended the war and may have saved as many American lives. Were Harry Truman and the U.S., weary after 4 years of war in the Pacific, justified in unleashing this devastation?
To understand the current thinking about Hiroshima, we went to the Nagaoka Anniversary of Peace at Ford Island last week, celebrating the past 70 years of peace between the U.S. and Japan. There were many people there.
So we're just inside the security point. We're going to go further now, closer to the stage, and see what we can see. This is actually a huge field, and there's a lot of people here. They look like they've been to events like this on a regular basis. This is something that's no surprise to the crowd that's here. 1 million people here, all spread out in the grass. A lot of kids, a lot of picnic blankets. A lot of troops watching us. The parking lot was full, and it was huge. So much is happening here. And we have some Hawaiian singing from a stage at the far end along the water's edge. It's very nice. We have food trucks behind us. The food trucks have come. They're all here.
The program included a number of speakers, performances by the Nagaoka Boys and Girls Choir and the Hearts Hawaii Choir, then a performance by a Japanese singer, Ayaka Hirahara.
Today, we welcome the delegation from Nagaoka City in Japan. Nagaoka, home of Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, who planned the Pearl Harbor attack, was itself set ablaze by American bombers in the waning stages of the war. Its people also suffered greatly. 1,486 lives were lost. But instead of harboring bitterness and resentment, the people of Nagaoka raised their arms in friendship and reconciliation.
日本の長岡市の使節団の皆様、ようこそハワイへお越しくださいました。
It's now my pleasure to welcome Rear Admiral John Fuller, Commander of Navy Region Hawaii and Naval Surface Group Middle Pacific, and our host for today. Admiral Fuller oversees 2 installations, Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam here on Oahu, and the Pacific Missile Range Facility at Barking Sands on Kauai. As MidPAC Commander, he leads all surface ships home ported in Hawaii.
続いて本日の主催者である米国太平洋艦隊ハワイ太平洋地域水上部隊司令官ジョン・フラー少将をご紹介いたします。
Yesterday, we held solemn remembrances here in Pearl Harbor, including one at the USS Arizona Memorial Marker. Today, we recognize the peace, the freedom, and the prosperity our 2 nations share. Japan and the United States are partners and the best of friends.
昨日、戦艦アリゾナ歴史顕彰碑を含むここ真珠湾で厳粛な追悼式典が執り行われ
And 70 years ago, in the early first 2 weeks of August, the scene was much different in cities in Japan.
それと同じく、70年前になりますけれども、8月の、最初の週、
Nagaoka was firebombed. Hiroshima felt the impact of the first atomic bomb ever dropped in the history of the world. And a couple of days later, Nagasaki was bombed with the only second atomic bomb in the history of the world.
長岡市は空襲の被害に遭われましたし、広島市におかれましては、世界で初めて原爆が投下されるということが起こりました。その数日後にまた長崎にも原爆が投下されました。
And yesterday, 70 years ago, peace came to the world. The war in the Pacific ended, and since then there has never been another world war fought.
けれども70年経った現在、この私たちの地上に平和が訪れています。70年間、次の世界大戦というものは起こることなく、私たちは平和を維持してくることができました。
Now I'd like to introduce the Mayor of Nagaoka City, Honorable Tamio Mori.
それでは長岡市森民夫市長にお言葉を頂戴いたしたいと思います。
アロハ。この5日前まで実は日本で台風のヒルダという名前が付けられた台風がこの日に襲ってくるのではないかと大変心配しておりました。
5 days ago, before leaving Nagaoka, I was very worried about Hurricane Hilda.
しかし、今日お集まりの皆さんの熱意がそのヒルダを吹き飛ばしてくれたと思っております。
However, thanks to the great enthusiasm of everyone who has gathered here this evening, Hilda must have flinched from facing Nagaoka Fireworks and gone away from us.
The Nagaoka Honolulu Youth Peace Exchange Summit. Peace Summit Declaration. We, the youth of Nagaoka and Honolulu, met together in a peace exchange in this, the year 2015, which marks the 70th year after the end of the Pacific War. Through this exchange together, we have learned about the tragic history of the Pearl Harbor attack in Honolulu and the Nagaoka air raid.
The Nagaoka Fireworks Display, frequently seen in Waikiki, featured a program called Our Prayer for the Pursuit of Peace, intended to honor the war victims with prayers for world peace. It was somehow ironic, however, to celebrate peace with explosives.
but attending the Nagaoka Anniversary of Peace left us wondering about so many things. We felt we needed to know more about how the bomb worked and has changed our world.
So we talked to some of our friends. First, we spoke with ThinkTech scientist and host Ethan Allen about how nuclear fission works. We also talked with him about peaceful uses, as in nuclear power and medicine.
It's a very tricky business doing nuclear fission, because what you're trying to do there is knock atomic nuclei apart, basically. And the atomic nucleus takes up this little tiny dot, and 99% of every atom is basically just completely empty space. And you're shooting that little tiny dot somewhere in the center, and you have to hit it rather well to break it apart. So it's a technically extremely challenging process to undertake the fission. And basically, the way they do it is by taking certain very heavy elements that have big nuclei and cramming them together in as tight as they can to get those nuclei as close together as they can until they hit a point which they call critical mass.
We talked with history professor John David Ann of Hawaii Pacific University to get his views on how the bomb has shaped the course of world history since 1945, how its secrets got out of the bag so soon thereafter, and how proliferation has changed the relationships between nations.
So the Americans, of course, had been developing a bomb since the late 1930s. Since 1939, they had started the Manhattan Project, and in 1945, by 1945, things had really accelerated. The lab at Los Alamos was the place where the bomb was being developed, and of course, Robert Oppenheimer was the head of that lab, and these guys were working furiously to develop this bomb because they believed in, what they believed in was that we had to develop this bomb before the Germans. The Germans also had a bomb project, and the fear was that if the Germans developed the atomic bomb first, oh boy, you know, there was going to be no way to win this war.
And we talked with ThinkTech host Roy Kidani about how the Japanese in Japan feel about what happened now 70 years after, and how they remember it so clearly even now.
You spent a lot of time in Japan, and that you had a special affinity for the culture in Japan, and I wanted to get your thoughts on exactly how people react today, 70 years later, because what happened was really devastating. And a lot of people killed, but more than that, it was frightening.
It's basically a generational question.
Yeah.
And I divide the generations into first the elders who actually experienced war, and then you have those who are now maybe in the 50s and 60s. Then you have the next generation, 30s and 40s. And then the last generation that I refer to would be the younger people who has no clue as to what really happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now, I'm going to concentrate more on the elders who had actual experience with the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
The fact remains that nuclear weapons are still around, bigger and more threatening than before, and in the hands of more numerous and less responsible leaders and countries than before. Does the recent Iran nuclear agreement come to mind? Can we trust the bullies not to push the button?
Hawaii understands Hiroshima was in our backyard, so much so that our state constitution requires a special 3/4 vote of the legislature for any nuclear development. The other irony is that nuclear weapons are here anyway, only a few minutes down the road from the legislature.
Generations of American school kids were taught to duck and cover in the event of Cold War nuclear attack. Are we as terrified by nuclear weapons as we were after Hiroshima or through the Cold War, or have we forgotten those fears? Once we were ardent advocates of non-proliferation. Are we as ardent these days? Do we have the moral suasion and global leadership we used to have to lead that effort? This is serious business.
The lesson is all too clear. We need to remember Hiroshima and Nagasaki and also Fukushima. We need to remember to manage the risks and not let these technologies get out of hand. There is no room for complacency or appeasement on threats that could destroy our planet.
Nuclear weapons are, of course, weapons of mass destruction, WMDs. But new technologies have led to a host of other deadly WMDs, biological and chemical weapons, for example, and these can be at least as threatening. We must manage and keep them under control too.
So looking back at Hiroshima now 70 years later raises many questions, including questions that have not been raised before. That's why, as painful as it is, looking back at the events like this and trying to make sense of them and learn from them is something we have to keep doing.
George Santayana is famous for saying that those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it. Amnesia about historical events, especially this one, is the most dangerous game of all. We cannot allow the future to distract us from the lessons of the past. To avoid repetition, we all need to remember.
That, beyond the fireworks and entertainment, is why the 2015 Nagaoka anniversary of peace is so important, not only for Japan and Hawaii, but for all the people and all the leaders and all the countries everywhere. And now let's take a look at our ThinkTech calendar of events going forward.
ThinkTech broadcasts its talk shows live on the internet from noon to 5 p.m. on weekday afternoons, and then we broadcast our earlier shows all night long. If you missed a show or want to replay or share any show, they're all archived on demand on YouTube.
Visit thinktechhawaii.com for our weekly calendar and our live stream and YouTube links, or better yet, sign up on our email list to get the daily docket of our upcoming shows.
ThinkTech has a great new studio at Pioneer Plaza. We invite you to come down to see our studio and be part of our live audience. Contact Jay at thinktechhawaii.com. Be a part of our civic engagement on ThinkTech.
Go ahead, give us a thumbs up on YouTube, or send us a tweet at ThinkTechHI. We want to know what you're thinking and how you feel about current issues and events affecting Hawaii. We want you to stay in touch with us, and we want to stay in touch with you. Let's think together.
On Thursday, September 17th, ThinkTech will join with the Anthology Marketing Group to present a program called Whither Thou Goest Waikiki, Engine of Our State's Economy, at the Anthology Theater in Bishop Square.
The program will cover the status and prospects of the hospitality industry in Hawaii and will feature business, government, and academic experts on tourism in Hawaii.
Join us and raise our awareness about the critical changes taking place in Hawaii. Be a part of the conversation and sign up to attend on thinktechhawaii.com. And now, here's this week's ThinkTech commentary by Donna.
I'm Donna Blanchard, and this is a ThinkTech commentary. I'd like to talk about nuclear energy. Whether we're talking about military or civilian use of nuclear energy to produce electricity or mass destruction, it is intrinsically the same thing. And what we've learned from Fukushima is that even when the intended use is electricity production, the threat of mass destruction exists. E equals mc squared, period. It seems a little ironic or darkly romantic that after the destruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan embraced nuclear energy and built more nuclear power plants than just about any other country, except perhaps France. They invested heavily in this resource because it seemed the smartest way to go at the time. Despite what we were led to believe in the 70s, nuclear energy is expensive, non-renewable, not clean, and catastrophically dangerous. Yet we're so hungry for electricity that we continue to utilize it. Unlike many other fossil fuels, nuclear power plants do not emit carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, or nitrogen oxide as part of the power generation process. However, fossil fuel emissions are associated with uranium mining. In New Mexico and Wyoming, our primary resources for uranium, indigenous tribes have long ago documented health risks associated with airborne emissions from uranium mining. In fact, the Navajo Nation enacted a ban on any type of uranium mining and processing on Navajo territory until past harms have been remediated. Fossil fuel emissions are also associated with the uranium enrichment process, as well as the transport of uranium fuel to and from nuclear power plants. Water is used in mass quantities, filled with heavy metals and salts that cannot be completely removed, treated to some extent, then dumped back into our lakes, rivers, and oceans. That water is also warmer than it was when it came out. That causes aquatic disruption along with chemical pollution. Think about that in areas where we're already talking about overfishing. And nuclear power plants produce radioactive waste. Yet we've continued to think of nuclear energy as bad in weapon form and good when you can use it to charge your cell phone. What to do with all that radioactive waste? Well, you can reprocess it. Once you've successfully made plutonium by burning your uranium in a nuclear reactor, you can separate this out and use it to make mixed oxide fuel, MOX, or nuclear weapons. Those of us who use nuclear energy have a ton of that stuff. This, of course, is where we get into the question of how much enrichment is a good thing. 3 to 5% for power, 20% for medical isotopes, and 85 to 90% for weapons. This is why there's been such deep discussion on plutonium-enriching centrifuges in the Iran nuclear agreement. Look, dark romanticism aside, Japan thoughtfully debated the use of nuclear energy after the meltdowns in Fukushima. That energy has been essential to the Japanese economy, and they have already spent billions to make it possible. 4 years after the tsunami, on August 11, 2015, Japan ended a de facto freeze on the use of atomic power and restarted one of dozens of nuclear reactors. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe supports restarting idled reactors that meet enhanced safety standards, arguing that Japan's economy depends on the low-cost power they provide. Now, it's considered low cost now because they have already spent money to build those plants. They are already there, waiting to produce electricity the economy requires to grow. Remember when Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev talked about nuclear fusion? That's different from the fission we've been discussing. It's cleaner, and in theory, can create unlimited power without any carbon emissions and very little radioactive waste. And it's actually happening in France right now. It's called the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor. Google France and cold fusion, and you'll find it. The US, Russia, most of Europe, Japan, China, India, and South Korea, a total of 35 countries are involved in the experiment. My point is, we're not done discovering solutions yet. We have to keep looking, and I'm sorry, but along with reducing, reusing, and recycling more than we ever thought possible before, we have to keep spending imagination, time, and money on really good ideas. It isn't enough to say we're going to use nuclear reactors because they're already there. Don't stop there. I'm Donna Blanchard, and this has been a ThinkTech commentary. We'll be right back to wrap up this week's edition of ThinkTech, but first we want to thank our underwriters.
Okay, Donna, that wraps up this week's edition of ThinkTech. Remember, you can watch ThinkTech on OC16 several times every week. Can't get enough of it, just like JFI Dell does. For additional times, check out oc16.tv.
For lots more ThinkTech videos and for underwriting opportunities on ThinkTech on OC16, visit thinktechhawaii.com. Be a guest or volunteer, a producer or intern, and help us reach and have an impact on Hawaii.
Thanks so much for being part of our ThinkTech Ohana and for supporting our open discussion of tech, energy, diversification, and globalism in Hawaii. You can watch this show throughout the week and tune in next Sunday evening for our next important weekly episode. I'm Duke Oishi. Aloha, everyone.
I'm Donna Blanchard. I'll see you on Wednesday, 2 to 3 p.m. on Center Stage. Aloha, everyone.